Welcome to the next episode of GodIsLoveTruthLife.com or GodIsLoveTruthFreedom.com, because a life without freedom is not a life worth living. And today I am welcoming my wonderful guest, Ann Lashbrook-Wright. Welcome.
Hi. I'm going to look at you here because I see you here and the camera is here. So hello to everyone else. I'm really excited to be here.
Yay. And yeah, we met through Mark Passio's How to Become the True Media course. And today we have a presentation about, your journey and however you want to get started on sharing your journey.
Yeah. So my full name is Ann Taylor Lashbrook-Wright. For most of my life, I went by Ann Taylor Lashbrook, and you can probably maybe find a lot of old content if you search things online from me. But I have been off of the social media space it'll be 4 years in January. And I am really excited to be part of Mark Passio's course, which is how I have this whole setup and how I'm, here in general. And I'm really working on being a student and learning such that I can, combat human slavery, right? I mean, that's the whole reason that we're here. And so what I wanted to share today is about choice and choosing and making the right choice. I wanted to keep it really, really simple, although I am incredibly long-winded and I have a lot of energy even now kind of, flowing through me. So I will do my best using the slides and using, more technology like I'm learning to support you, the person who is watching this. My goal is for you to take action. I feel that we're in a very, very critical time. We will talk a little bit about, let's make sure, oh, there it is. That's much better than the light, about this old book in just a little bit from very synchronistically. It was written in 1984, just so you know.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Right?
Nice.
Isn't that crazy? So before I go into the slides, is there anything else I can kind of share? Any questions that you have, or we're just kind of good to go?
I think we're good to go. And yeah, I love reading that book to my kid. I think that's how we originally connected, because you brought up that book in our group and I was like, yeah, I love that book. So.
Yeah, all about the kiddos, right? So all about, our future, which is why this book is so pivotal and why it's so pivotal right now. Okay. So I'm going to keep breathing and take a deep breath, and I'm going to share my entire screen, but eventually you'll see my slides here. And, I will get faster at these things. I trust Passio that I will get faster at these things over time. And that's the very end of the presentation. There we go. Okay. And cool. So I call this the first generation off the farm, because that is what I am. That is what my partner is. That is my generation, where I come from. I'm from Kentucky. My family has lived in the kind of the Ohio County, Davis County region of Kentucky. It's pronounced Davis here, but it's actually spelled Davies if you need to look that up. But I was born in 1982, and but my family is from Kentucky. My parents are. My grandparents went to the same elementary school, and for approximately 6 or 7 generations, my family has been in the same area of the Ohio River Valley.
Wow.
And although I do feel that I was raised by my family, I had a lot to learn about really making the right choice, and we'll kind of keep moving forward with that. So this is actually, this is my son Carter from quite a few years ago. He's about to turn 8 years old. And this is a barn that is still on my grandmother's family farm. And it's gone. It's been sold. And he got to spend a couple years of his life there. And because of choices that, my aunts and uncles and my father made, that there's a little bit of land that my uncle lives on, but most of it was sold. And I think that there are many people in this country and in the world that, no longer have their family farms. And my intention in my son's life is to be able to get him back to the farm. And I call my project that I'm working on Carter's Country Club because, maybe you listen to country music, maybe you don't. Maybe all you've ever heard is popular country music, which if you do a little bit of research and you look into Kathy O'Brien, you will understand that the country music industry was definitely infiltrated and people were really under some powerful mind control. But loving, bluegrass instruments, which is how I was raised. There's some sitting on my wall, mandolin right to the right of my computer here. And, I was told that country music was 3 chords and the truth. And what I'm going to do my best today is to share truth.
Nice. As a sidebar, do you like Oliver Anthony?
Have Oliver you heard his music? Anthony. Well, I
he went viral.
Yeah, for sure. I have heard some things as of late that perhaps he's, in quotes, sold out. But I don't know. But I do like his work. And when that song kind of first was popular, I really felt a strong connection to it for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, all the country music we love. Oh, we love it. I mean, I love all kinds of different music, but Carter's a little partial to stringed instruments. So we'll see.
Nice.
Okay, so this church sits on the top of Habit Hill outside of Owensboro, Kentucky, in a little area called Philpott. This is where my grandmother played the piano for, I believe it was 76 years. She started playing piano in the church across the street from her house when she was 12 years old. And her father, my daddy Miller, my great-grandfather, owned the general store. And there was just a school and a church and the general store that they owned.
Amazing.
And so you can read what's written here on the slides, but I want to read it a little bit because it really grounds me in the truth that I really was raised in. So the wisdom of all my grandmothers, not just, this is who I called my Nana. This is Norma Taylor Lashbrook. She passed away a number of years ago. But anyway, all my grandmothers shared a lot of wisdom, and I will kind of reference the wisdom of the grandfathers and the grandmothers and the elders throughout this presentation. But she showed me what Christ consciousness is. I know that it is a change in consciousness versus policy or politics that is needed to, quote, save us. This is not a spiritual or religious war, in my opinion, but a war of right versus wrong. There is no time to debate religion or dogma. We must focus. I'm so sorry. That is my Jack Russell.
This is real life. Feel free to bring your dog on.
Yeah, he's just gonna bark because my husband is home.
Oh.
So yeah, we try to control it, and it will just. Can you grab him? Just grab him. They can't see you. There's no video. It's just him barking.
I can also pause the recording. Do you want me to do that, or you want to keep going?
Yeah, that sounds great. Let's pause it, and then I'll kind of go back.
Okay, sure. And we're back.
The wisdom of all my grandmothers showed me what Christ consciousness is. I know it is a change in consciousness versus policy or politics that is needed to, quote, save us. This is not a spiritual or religious war, in my opinion, but a war of right versus wrong. There is no time to debate religion or dogma. We must focus on our Creator's principles, what others call first principles, natural law, God's law, natural rights, and or divine law. There is objective morality, and we must begin to raise our young by putting first things first. Unlike most, my family did raise me. So I was raised in the church, and that was definitely part of my past, which I can speak to at great lengths. But all I wanted to do here was remind the person listening that there is an urgency in what is going on in our world. And my invitation is to let go of the dogma, and can we please come together to fight what is wrong?
I love it. Yeah, and I just want to
for sure. Go for it.
Briefly comment and add, like, to what you're saying. Yeah, like, I think a lot of criticism that happens when figures like Christ are brought up. It's like we're not, it's not a religious thing. It's just, like you said, it's in the mind, how we think, how we behave in the world, right? Yeah.
Oh, for sure. And again, that's why it's kind of perfect that we're talking about the Butter Battle book, and that this slide is right here in front of us. I mean, this was, my lineage and my path. And I, for a very, very long time, maybe since I was very young, I really rebelled against the institution of the church, specifically against the Presbyterian Church USA, which comes in much later in my life. But I don't think about Jesus Christ, like his last name is Christ, and like his name is even really Jesus, right? His name, again, depending on the scholars, depending on who you're looking at, would be Yeshua. And I love the story about him overturning the table with the bankers. I mean, we could go on all that. But exactly, it's the Christ consciousness that affected a change within me, not the institution. That was a source of great wrong, actually. I think in our world, and definitely in my life. So like Jerry said, how we're here is I have been working on this piece about the Butter Battle book. And if you haven't read the Butter Battle book, right here are the final words that Seuss leaves us with. It says, "Grandpa," I shouted, "be careful. Oh, gee, who's going to drop it? Will you or will he?" "Be patient," said Grandpa. "We'll see. We will see." And there's a lot of history and a lot of story that really goes into the Butter Battle book. And they've actually, had really cool university lectures and things about Seuss's work, and specifically about the Butter Battle book, and, when it was written in the Cold War. And I just think it is so timely now. And one of the things that, I could go on this all day, because I've been really writing a lot about this. There's so much in this allegory of this story. And, but my dad was who, a number of years ago, reminded me of the Butter Battle book when Dr. Seuss, was, quote, being censored, and they were, quote, book burning, Dr. Seuss's books. My dad said, "It's the Butter Battle book. They're after the Butter Battle book." He said, "That's what they don't want people to read." And
true fact.
Right. I mean, there's so many that they can look at, but I really, this is not looked at. And the old, film, like the cartoon of this, is really impactful. There's just so much to say there. But I share this in that, for me, I'm, like I said, I'm really grateful. My parents, of course, made choices, and we'll kind of talk about some of those choices that maybe didn't serve us in our life, or maybe were, quote, wrong, really were wrong choices. But reading me the Butter Battle book was not a wrong choice. Go ahead. Go for it.
Oh, I love this book, and just can't wait to hear more about your thoughts on it. But just briefly, like, when I first read the book to my son, he goes, "Well, who wins?" And I'm like, "What do you think?" And he's like, "I don't know." And I'm like, and I just let him. I think he understood that, by not answering his question, he was forced to question his question,
Mm-hmm. So, well, I think the answer is who wins is right here in Alex Gray's work. The prodigal son, what is created from divine masculine and feminine coming together, and what is created and they're, you know, like just like this little image here of this, you know, little baby. It's up to him. It's up to them. And that's what I really want to invite action into is, you know, it's up to this next generation. It's up to the choices that we're all here to make. And that's why I also wanted to share this quote from, you know, Siddhartha. The trouble is you think you have time, right? We think that, you know, just like in the end of the book, you know, we don't know what's going to happen, and we think we have time to debate it or time to have conversations about it. But there is a great urgency, at least in my thing. And I wanted to also have this slide here to invite the person watching this to look at the color throughout my slides. Again, inspired by our teacher, who is why we're here, by Mark Passio. I did my best to incorporate color in relationship to the chakra system, because that was part of my journey throughout this whole thing. And so I chose this slide to be yellow. I'm not going to go into every slide, but I chose this one to be yellow because it's at the core, right? At the core of who we are is, in our core is where we take action, is that Manipura chakra, is our soul, you know, our solar plexus. All of those places are where we find, you know, right action. And so, you know, hopefully you all kind of enjoy those. Some of the slides will be a bit harsh because of the choice of color, but I did my best to choose things that were somewhat subdued, but, you know, so there's a, you know, method to the madness, as they say.
Love it.
So one of the things that I really know to be true is that there are more than two choices. And my hope here is to really inspire that choice of what the next generation will make, just like at the end of the Butter Battle book. What will they choose? And so this is my story about choice. And I am doing my best to go through this. At some point in these slides, it'll become kind of chronological, to hope to really allow you to see kind of this journey, and perhaps you can relate it to your own journey, because we're looking back on some of these things, because we're here in the present moment. You know, you're here watching the screen and looking at this image of my son, and so you know, hopefully it will make sense. And I like this quote that most people attribute to Wayne Dyer, but it actually came before that. And if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. I have lots of quotes that I've shared in here to do my best to show, again, like Passio teaches us, our eclectic sources. So kind of, this is a disclaimer as we move forward. I made different choices in my life, perhaps, than you made. They do not involve staring at a screen. I am sharing this because it is the right thing to do, not because I want to be doing this. I would really rather not, although I'm kind of enjoying the conversation and I'm happy to be here with Jerry and I'm happy to share with you, but I would really rather not be staring at the screen. I definitely did not want to work on these slides. I would rather be rock climbing. So my intention is to humbly share my story in faith that this has found you in a critical time. If you are under mind control and are unconscious, like many other caring beings on this planet, I ask that you listen to my call. Our Creator's natural rights are the answer, and our Divine Mother is crying out for us to remember the truth. There is no authority greater than our Creator, and creating in our small-minded egos has gotten us here. The answer is not over there, out there, or up there. It is here. The trees ask us to remember before it is too late. We must choose love.
Mic drop.
And I chose to share this quote from The Art of War, because I know that we're in a war. And, you know, I don't know. It doesn't seem like we're winning. That is for sure. So that is why I'm here. And I'm here for this dude. And like I said, I made completely different choices for him than maybe others have made. And over the last number of years, we've spent majority of our life in a pool. And the results of that are that he is a very beautiful swimmer, even though he's very tired of swimming. We love the ballet, and I really believe that the arts have been taken from us. I'm probably going to get emotional. I believe they have been co-opted. You'll see a couple slides later on, that really show the state of the choices that the arts have made, and the infiltration that has happened in those. And I think that's why it's pretty important to share Baryshnikov and Shirley Temple, because I can't even imagine what those two must have been through. But I also share these quotes here, which you can read. I'm not going to read them, but I share these quotes here because I do believe that there is wisdom in the way that that we can achieve discipline in the practice of dance. So again, I definitely am not for communism at all, like totally,
Right.
The opposite. But there's some wisdom that we can miss if we just abandon the arts altogether and say, oh, they're just taken over by, whatever. And if all we think about is the atrocities that happened to child stars, then maybe we miss the beauty in what Shirley Temple did, and perhaps even what her intentions were, in the United Nations, and maybe what was even behind that. I don't really know much, but anyway, ballet is, and the whole like a somatic practice, a mind-body practice is my path, and is also my son's path in this moment. And
Nice.
one thing that I really want to make a point across is that boys dancing does not have to be the way that it is marketed and sold in our world right now. There are strong masculine dancers, and that was really the foundation. And that is being really lost, in my opinion. Which, again, I could get into in a lot of details from even some really wonderful choreographers. But anyway, I'll continue to move forward. Not too much this is not about ballet. Although this shows you where I brought him at a young age, and Carter is going to be in the Nashville Ballet's production of the Nutcracker. He's going to play Fritz.
Whoa.
And
Nice.
super cool. Yeah, we just found out about it, and it's going to be a lot of travel, and it's going to be crazy. And there's also something that that my husband and I talked about and observed that does kind of relate to Shirley Temple, in that the children really are used in a way to market and sell things. And if we're not really clear on our morals and our values, we could make some really interesting choices, which we will not. But it's interesting. And that brings us to the Mr. Right that is actually in the other room. I can hear them kind of banging around. So like I said, my now married name, my son said, he goes, he's always right. He really is always right. And I have learned probably more about right action from him than any other human being. And when he first said that he was right because he was born that way, I really kind of cringed at that, because I was still, when I met Justin, I was still under a lot of solipsism and really believed that there was not objective morality. And so the journey in our relationship, which is not necessarily the point of this presentation, but, was for me to see, what was true right action. And but I was very aware that the ego has a need to be right, and I was very aware of like natural rights, but I definitely, was still kind of compartmentalized. And this is us and our journey. And back to the eclectic sources. Like I said, I don't want to get too much into our relationship and the three of us and how I see the sacred masculine. But if you're somebody that's on your journey and you haven't found David Data's work, then perhaps that's a place to look. And like Mark Passio says, just because I share an author or I share a quote doesn't mean I believe everything they say. It's just some powerful wisdom. And with that, I definitely wanted to give a note here. If you're watching this and for some reason you haven't gone through all of What on Earth is Happening, I invite you to go there. And I stole this slide from one of Mark's slides for podcasting things like maybe 82 or 85, I don't know, somewhere in the 80s, because I wanted to take a breath here. And I'll look on my watch and remember what time it is. If you haven't found Kathy O'Brien's work, listener, buy her books, read them. They've really supported me, and I could understand things in a way that I hadn't before, and how Mark Phillips supported her, at least through me reading her books and her story, how he supported her coming out of mind control. Really, really reminds me of what the sacred masculine can do for the divine feminine, what I see in my own relationship, and what I really see in Mark Passio's anger really supports me in just loving the divine masculine, and helping me to sift through things. And to provide solutions, which is what this slide is about. And what I hope this presentation continues to be about is, we've talked a little bit about where I come from and the problem of our war versus right and wrong, but hopefully we'll slowly move into some solutions.
Nice.
And one of the solutions that I have found is within this book, Krivda, The God Tricks Against the Matrix by Anna Reintordt. I've read it twice. This is an image from Living 40 with Paul Chek. He has a 4-part series with Anna. And if you haven't found her, again, I really invite it. And I think that she, as you see here, there's the image of etymology, the etymology of words, so helpful. And again, so timely. And I'll read a little bit of her quote here. But the reason why I wanted to share with you here before moving on, in hopes that Anna Reintordt's words will do a better job to clarify why I know that order followers in the Butter Battle book are the ones actually doing the bidding of dark occultists that seek to control our world, while the rest of us just sit by. In the section on secular gods in Krivda, The God Tricks Against the Matrix, under the heading of the God of War, Reintordt lays out some powerful truth. War operates as a ritual sacrifice on a very large scale. It is initiated by very high priest, but the actual ritual action is performed by the rank and file. Humans sacrificing each other under the spell of patriotic propaganda, or because killing is how they professionally earn a living. Great emotional charge is invested in patriotic beliefs, since soldiers are driven by a base natural urge, excuse me for that, that's a correction I need to make, a base natural urge to protect their families at least as much as their national flag. But the religion of war cultivates with greater ruthlessness than any other god the mind-controlled reflex of obedience in its rank and file, such that it not be tainted by moral considerations or the softer emotions of kindness. In this sense, it is surpassed only by the obedience internalized through trauma, by operatives programmed by secret bank MK Ultra programs, or by initiatory training in secret occult societies, this being part of the different occult war that exceeds the jurisdiction of the War of God. Ryan Tork concludes this massive work with powerful solutions and a call to awaken us to the human path. It's what the Bengali called the human path. I too find myself called to seek a solution. Each year, I become more awake to the problems in our world and the war on our souls. My hope as I write this is that I can invite you to see that bombing the other side will never be the answer.
Amazing.
So, Passio has been talking a lot about shadow work, and that definitely resonates with the work that I have done in parts of my life. And that sometimes that shadow work was, maybe not authentic. And there's some things that I've done in my life that people probably have called a cult, and not occult, but a cult. And so I wanted to own up to the choices that I've made that were wrong, that I now know were purely satanic. And being unconscious and under mind control is no excuse. I know I am not a victim. I own that I made immoral choices. I was wrong to think that there was not objective morality. I was ignorant and selfish. The small s self is separation from our creator instead of separation from God. I chose this image because, as somebody who teaches recreational gymnastics, which is one of the things that I do professionally now, all I can see is how disconnected and broken my spine is there. I can see the compression in my lumbar. I can see my knees shooting forward. And there is no part of that that looks like a heart opening back bend. And when I took this photo in, I don't know, it's probably, maybe it's like, I don't know, 2010 or 11. I don't know when that's from, probably 10 or 11. I was just trying to get a cool picture in the sunset to market what I was doing. And, if we don't own up to that, excuse me, I'll speak for if I don't own up to, the choices that I made, I would not be where I am today. And that's also why this slide is kind of white and bright, is just to draw our attention. And my invitation to the person listening to this is for all of us to let go of those things that aren't serving us, and admit when we were wrong. In 2006, I made the right choice, and that was to have this. Yeah. And so these are some images from the last couple of years. Like I said, I made very different choices, and I continue to make very different choices. And I will keep referencing Mark Passio because he is my teacher in this moment. I am making my way through his work. I am immersing myself in his work. I am doing the work in his training because that is the type of athlete that I am. That is the student that I am. And when we know better, we do better. And I knew that starting Carter in athletics at a young age was the right choice. And when Passio, I think it's, I could be wrong, but I think it's tenet number 10 is for us to never give up. And even though Carter does not enjoy swimming, and this was his fourth summer as a 7-year-old, because I put him on the team when he was 4, because I'm crazy in sort of that sense. But he doesn't get to give up. And that has gone into everything. I mean, his movement in general is a subject for another time. But he's the reason I'm here. And heaven on earth is looking at my little boy. And that is so true. And I want to apologize to Jenny McCarthy. Not that I know her or anything, but I remember judging her. Now, I definitely knew that she was right about vaccines, but I didn't listen to her because of her physical appearance. And just like what Passio says in his work, don't look at the messenger. All I could think of was, her, days of, what is it, USA Up All Night or whatever. Now, I knew she was right, but I wasn't going to really listen to her message. So I really invite you, even if you don't dig me and what I'm sharing, to do your best to listen to your message, because I know there's truth in it. And maybe my words are not for you. Maybe they're for someone else. Who knows? Like I said, different choices that I've made for him. Carter recently competed in a triathlon. And again, he doesn't really care about swimming. He loves the bike, though, which is a whole other story. And I put him in track and field because I was watching him in a basketball camp. And if I'm being really honest, he kind of looked a little awkward with his warm-ups. And I was like, oh, I don't want him to be the kid that runs weird. Not really. I mean, it's kind of me joking, but really I just knew that he needed support. And I know from my years of working with adults that people somehow think they don't need to learn to run. Absolutely need to learn movement. There are, we can talk about primal movement all day, but there is a value in technique, which again, if we just silence Russia and we silence everything as that communism had no value, then we might miss that there was some value in, say, Russian kettlebells. Again, I could talk about the world of physical culture all day, and the history of physical culturalists, but again, not the point of this. I have to keep myself moving.
Well, I was just going to say briefly, like tying what you're saying to the book, the military co-ops this beautiful aspect of humanity in leveraging, athleticism, physical training for, wrong actions. But yeah, I'm with you. Like, I feel like in order to sort of develop right action and the discipline for right action, that can be done through, it should. I also, for me, I used to be a lot more athletic than I am now, but just like training, like you said, learning to actually run, there is an art to that. Just learning the physical arts is part of that process of learning how to self-discipline. So absolutely. I don't think you're going off on a tangent or anything. I think this is spot on.
Okay, cool. Just as a quick note, I'm not really clear how to go backwards in my slides. Do you know that? Because I feel like I could have gone backwards and just kept on a picture, and it's just like I'm forward.
I'm not sure.
Well, we won't worry about it. It's something for me to learn for the future. Again, that's probably just my perfectionism coming through.
I'm a recovering Luddite. I've been calling myself that.
Yes. Oh, totally. 100%. So while I am awakening from mind control, I know I still lose time and get off track. My intention here is to share a synchromystic timeline of sorts. I hope to inspire you to take right action. I love when I heard the word synchromystic, because that really, back to that image of my grandmother and my other grandmothers, like my great grandmother, who she really, she was very proud of this mixed heritage, in her words, that she was a daughter of the American Revolution and Cherokee. And she, her husband would not allow her to go be a nurse during the time of war. So she decided to go be a midwife so she could deliver babies. And she had all of this natural wisdom. And she is really where I feel like, all of my grandmothers, I feel like, and just the wisdom of that has led me into my life. So even though I had some early trauma and I lose sometimes my sense of time, fortunately, that, I don't know, that wisdom still guided me on some level. And that takes us back to Carter's birth. And I have shared this story. It was on a previous podcast that no longer exists. And I am, even in this current day, figuring out how to share that old content in a way where I can share the truth that's there, but also see the mind control that was still present. And so I had a home birth planned with
Nice.
my son, and that's my doula there. One of them. I had many doulas. I
Love it.
labored for 64 hours,
Holy
and
shit.
that part was beautiful. Part was beautiful.
You're
Um,
amazing.
but no, I made a very horrific choice, and that's why I chose this quote here, because it was one of the first pages of a journal that my grandmother gave to me, and I chose fear. I chose fear in that moment, after 64 hours. And I knew that I made the wrong choice, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But there is so much that is distorted in the Bible, 100%, and I've known that for most of my life. But just like we can look at an author and find wisdom, even if we don't agree with everything, the truth does set us free, and it will every single time. And I totally was saved there. So this is one of my young midwives here with her hands on my back. I had two very young midwives. Our senior midwife was at a conference. And like I said, I labored for 3 days. There with me in the tub are my two my two kind of birthing partners that were there. Again, my whole world prior to Carter being born is a whole story in and of itself. But after those 64 hours of labor, I was afraid, and again, it's totally fear. I was afraid that I was making the choice to stay at home based on me. I thought that, and my young midwives had never seen somebody labor for this long. I had a lot of scar tissue on my cervix, which is, again, a story for another time, a lot of trauma. And so I was afraid that I was staying at home for me. And so I chose to humble myself and go to the hospital. And it was a satanic, horrific experience. And Carter came out of that. But once I got to the hospital, I knew I had made the wrong choice. I knew that it would have been okay, that I would have been okay at home. But once I got to the hospital, my choices were stripped from me. That picture before, my image with the doula, they said, you have no choice. And he said, it's hospital policy. Your white blood cell count is too high. They knew my water had been broken for a long time. I was labeled as a home birth transfer, and they said, the only choice you have is to go fully under anesthesia. You must go fully under and have a cesarean. Now, I didn't, again, back to this whole concept of choice. I could have chosen to go home. I could have chosen to get back in the truck and go home. And I didn't. And so when I was on the operating table, actually, before the operating table, again, this is back to the trauma, so I sometimes have a hard time with my timeline. So when they told me that was my only choice, I looked at my doula and I said, God wants me to tell this story. I made the wrong choice. He wants me to tell this story, and I will tell this story. And I did. I actually gave a podcast on the 4th day that they held me in the hospital. But again, another story for another time. And I lay on that operating table. I was paralyzed immediately from the anesthesia. I'm 1 in 10,000 that doesn't create the enzymes to wake up naturally from anesthesia. We didn't know that because I didn't really go to the hospital a lot. I didn't grow up in a family where, with my immediate family, really my mother. We didn't do that, and so I didn't know. I'd never been under anesthesia, and so once I was paralyzed, the last thing I remember was praying, and I said, God, I'm so sorry. Which is still, again, you can see the mind control because I was still looking to Him, but I knew it, and I knew that that's what I would, that all I could do was pray and surrender and apologize for the choice that I'd made. And so I woke up in the ICU. You can probably tell that's a man's chest right there, holding Carter. So the skin to skin was not me. And they held me for many days. And again, a story for another time. But the wisdom of the grandmothers, it came through. As I lay in the hospital, had stopped breathing, was paralyzed, and then strapped down with only my ears to hear, I prayed again. I surrendered and asked for help. I awoke hours later on a ventilator, being shown a picture of my son and typing on a phone to communicate. I will not make this choice again. I felt that my rights were fully taken. I mean, I'm not a victim. I made the choice, but I did feel that way at the time. I spent 4 days fighting to leave. Out of fear, I chose to leave home, and I will never again to look to any institution to save me. I knew it was wrong. I knew they were corrupt. I knew I shouldn't have gone. I do have a belief that he saves, but I am here to share that I know that but I'm here to share what I know, not what I believe. This is my personal experience, my story, my truth. No one else's, and I will only share what I know to be true. My word, not the word, and definitely not his word. Just, that was my experience. And again, more details for another time. So now I'm going to go back in time. So that was my biggest trauma, my biggest awakening, although there was many early trauma. So I was born in 1982 in Bowling Green, Kentucky, where I still sit today. I've come back full circle. My father went to work for a bank in my parents' hometown of Owensboro in Kentucky shortly after. For about 6 months, we lived in Franklin, Tennessee, outside of Nashville, where I attended my second year of preschool. This gives you a little window into how my brain works. I don't exactly see the world in pictures like Temple Grandin, but I know my mind is probably somewhat different from yours. If you are only familiar with Temple Grandin from the HBO film of her name, I invite you to read her books and learn of her wisdom shared through her unique mind. The first child I met who was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome in the late 1990s, I loved how his brain worked. To this day, I treasure my time with many of the special needs children I teach in swimming. Adaptive learn to swim is a topic for another day, but I do think understanding a bit of thinking in pictures is relevant to getting to the importance of symbolism hidden in plain sight within the pages of the Better Battle book. Growing up, Grandin writes, I learned to convert abstract ideas into pictures as a way to understand them. I visualized concepts such as peace or honesty with symbolic images. I thought of peace as a dove and an Indian peace pipe, to TV or newsreel footage of the signing of the peace agreement. Honesty was represented by an image of placing one's hand on the Bible in court. A news report describing a person returning a wallet with all the money in it provided a picture of honest behavior. I share this of Temple Grandin because I believe that the MMR vaccine harmed me. I believe that the handful of vaccinations that I was given, which I believe were only 11, harmed me. And, we could talk about the food, which is also why I love that my hand is in a box of Cheerios that weren't quite GMO, but they definitely were not good. Like I said, my parents made a lot of really great choices. And throughout my childhood, I would make different, they made a lot of right choices. And once we knew better, we did better. And that senior picture of me on the far right, I think that was the last year that I received, I think I had like a tetanus shot. So it's probably the last year that I received anything. In 1987 to 1990, shortly after my sister was born in Tennessee, we moved to Boca Raton, Florida. Then to Ellicott City outside of Baltimore, Maryland, where my dad was working for Maryland National Mortgage. like I said, my family comes from the farm. My dad was an agriculture major, and he also did his graduate work in agriculture, I believe, still. But he's very brilliant with numbers, and his mentor in college thought that going into banking would be a good choice. I think it was a terrible choice. That's my words. He's the first boy, and he would have that farm. And I don't necessarily think that he should have it, that all of my family should have it. But banking allowed me to see through a lot in my life, and at a very, very young age.
Wow.
My father's choice to be driven in his career had our family move every 6 months to 2 years. He would continue to move about his life, and I would follow in his footsteps. I had few issues with the moving, and I felt I was always able to adapt easily. To this day, I fight the pull to pack up and move. I also find myself searching for opportunities all the time. I'm going to go to this mountain town. I have no fears of starting over. But that's that part of my, psyche that developed at a young age was I just want to go. There's always better, always better.
Wow.
And so this is my first ballet, back to ballet. I did Beauty. That's like me backstage, which is where, Carter's going to be soon. Again, we can talk about the atrocities in the arts, but there's so much beauty in the arts.
Yeah.
This picture of me doing this horrific stretch, I was not very flexible. I really remember laying on my belly, and all the other little girls, at least in my mind, that they could all put their feet on their head when they laid on their belly, and I couldn't do that. Like I said, just like Carter, I started swimming at a young age. At 4 years old, I believe I swam, my first 25 meters.
Wow.
And, so I was at a really cool club called Mission Bay, which is where Greg Louganis trained.
Amazing.
Which is really interesting because looking back at it again, in that kind of synchronistic timeline, all the stuff about AIDS was coming out. And I remember just feeling like something was off, and now we know about Fauci and AZT and all kinds of craziness. Yeah, I can get lost. But that was my childhood here. And you can see also the school images. So yes, I did attend big time, brainwashing through public education. I was taken out of classes at a really young age and put in gifted programs. There's like parts of the trivium that I actually think I was taught, but everything was like so compartmentalized, was so, weird.
Yeah.
And this also, shows that I have a little bit of neuroses and a love for Jack Russells and rat terriers. So that was the one that barked earlier. He got it. This is not him. These are dogs that are long gone. But anyway, moving on. So in 1991, my parents' divorce was final, and my mom chose to take us back to Bowling Green. I did struggle with this choice. I did not like the small town. After years with a close proximity to large cities, I felt I had gone back in time. I began to relish every trip that we took down to Nashville. If we were going down there to go shopping for back to school clothes, I wanted to be in a big city. Again, possibly, incredible mind control, but that was what I felt at the time. Because just like my father's and my mother's generation wanted to leave the small town, I really, thought that small towns were wrong and backwards. I do not feel that way today, but I did then. As I got older, I traveled as much as possible. In my teens, I threatened my mother often to try to leave her and live with my father. I really, again, my parents did a very good job of trying to work together. They all had their faults, but I played them off one another for sure. And that fragment of the divorce really had me feel very fractured. My father had remarried shortly after the divorce. He moved from Maryland, where my next sister was born, back to Florida, to Atlanta, where my baby brother was born, and back to Florida. The mother of my siblings, I still call my stepmother to this day. after their divorce came wife number 3.
Wow.
Yeah, right. Again, this is such a fitting thing. Why I share my story is not because my story is any different. My story is probably very similar to maybe, I don't know who of you my story is similar to that's listening to this, but some stories are similar. That first generation off the farm, also the first generation for divorce within all of within most of my family. But that third wife, they bought a second house down in the Florida Keys. I begged my dad to get a prenup. He did not trust me. He told me I was silly and 18 years old. He did not make this choice, and it cost him greatly. I learned at this time that the state has no place in relationships. She was a lawyer, and my first experience of a psychopath. Again,
Oh, wow.
oh yeah, oh yeah. Like she literally, we believe she sank a boat that my dad and my 3 other siblings were on. She's
Oh,
probably
God.
very fortunate that she didn't sink that boat, because I would have come after her. I share this slide because I do at some point really would love to get into talking about food in my work. But I wanted to point out here that if you look just north of Nashville, Tennessee, even in this, what used to be a small town of Bowling Green, Kentucky, there is a large dot, because Bowling Green is not just known for Corvettes. It's also has more restaurants per capita, I believe, than New York City, which is just
Really?
disgusting, so gross. Like I said,
Wow.
I was really resistant to Bowling Green. The university here definitely has its pros and cons. We could get into that, but I really struggled, and I really struggled in a big way throughout high school. Now, this beautiful baby on the left is not me. That is my full sister. And I wanted to remind myself as I got into these slides that I was so wrong to her. I was very cruel to that little baby, and
Oh.
I have vowed to I fought with her. I didn't understand her. We're the classic like first and second born. I'm this serious, ridiculous perfectionist. She's hilarious and beautiful and magical. But I had to share this image just because she is so beautiful. And if anybody else didn't value their siblings, we can all say we're sorry.
Girl, you're getting me crying like
I
so much this
know.
presentation.
She's
OMG.
perfect. Look at her. And I wanted to also remind everybody watching this that there are children like her. And I'm not here to tell her story, and this is not part of her story that I'm telling, but there are children that are just as beautiful as her in her little white paper white that are horrifically abused, and we must remember that. We must always remember that, and that's why we're here. All these high school images, I hope they were old enough and blurred enough that you can't really fully see everybody's face. But I was a horrific soccer player, just so bad, which is why I went back to dance. One of these images is from a musical, lots of dance images. I really struggled with our world throughout the late 90s. And I was introduced to psychedelics at a really young age. And I was already really seeking consciousness expanding, to try to figure out, what was going on within me and why I just couldn't seem to, I just wanted out. I wanted out of the world and school and all of those things. And, we could probably dig deeper into many other things about that, but I want to keep moving forward and keep my focus. At that same young age, I had a probably we could call him a Jungian scholar, ran my youth group in church.
Wow.
And eventually the Presbyterian Church USA would dismantle my youth group and rip my world apart. But we studied Carl Jung. We did dream interpretation. We did Myers-Briggs to try to help us understand our relationships with our parents. We were reading Eckhart Tolle. We were Conversations with God was our first required text, and the Presbyterian Church USA hated it. Again, story for another time. But I was really fortunate, really fortunate. Yeah. So after all of that, after leaving my hometown, I moved to Hermosa Beach, California on the suggestion of my mom's lifelong friend. At 19, I thought I wanted to live in LA when I was young and in New York when I was older. I mean, I was so like a brainwashed American girl, like 100%. Which I would love to, talk a little bit more about that on another time. But I want to keep moving. For years, I lived on the west side of Los Angeles while attending Santa Monica College, studying dance and political science, of all things. I was like so many that moved across the country with dreams of being in film. I'll totally tell you how egoic and ridiculous and stupid I was. Through guides and my own seeking, I realized that wanting to work in film was just my brainwashing. During the 2004 election, I attended an art show that would profoundly impact my life. They gave away large prints for people to distribute. The one I hung in the house, I shared with 11 rock climbers, had a picture of the W with the words that said, "Dumb down the population and maintain fear." I was fully aware of election fraud then, so it definitely didn't surprise me years ago. I had already registered with my brainwashing for the Green Party at age 18, believing that surely we needed more than two parties. But by 2004, I really had given up on politics. And I went to Joshua Tree.
Fucking love this picture. Holy shit.
Isn't that great? This is cowboy camping is when you just like roll out, your sleeping bag and just sleep under the stars. And J Tree is the best place to do that as long as, the scorpions and rattlesnakes aren't out. So you got to do it, in the good season. For many years, we're coming up on this season right now. For many years, it was like my celebration weekend of my birthday. I have 6 planets in Libra, and so I was born on October 16th, 1982. And we would always go out to Joshua Tree for my birthday. And shortly after moving to Los Angeles, I went out to J Tree for the first time. And I believe that these trees and the desert and that nature really, really like saved me. Like if anything could, they did.
Wow.
And for me, climbing is a form of exploration that inspires me to confront my own inner nature within nature. It's a means of experiencing a state of consciousness where there are no distractions or expectations. This intuitive state of being is what allows me to experience moments of true freedom and harmony. And if you don't know who Lynn Hill is, you must look at her up. I'm sure her politics and stuff, are absurd, as most rock climbers are, which is another sad story. But maybe they're not. I don't know. But Lynn Hill is really amazing, and her book was a huge inspiration to me in my early 20s. And so I spent. Whoa. Right. So these are so old. Look at my old bandana. I got my like big capris on and stuff. But that's Courtright Reservoir on the left, and that's the Buttermilks and Bishop in the top right hand corner, and in the bottom you can see the Joshua trees. That's there. So I would spend as much time possible climbing, and that moving in the vertical world was everything to me. The first time I went climbing, I was actually a teenager here outside of my hometown in Kentucky. I was not aware that there were small enough climbing shoes anywhere for me. So I had on hiking boots and I did my best. And so when I moved to California, and, you know, who would have thought that like young guys would take me climbing? I thought that was crazy. I couldn't believe that they would mess with me because my stepbrother like didn't want to take me climbing, and you know, like the climber dudes, you know, were kind of had their own attitude like surfers. And so I couldn't believe. So I would like do everything for them. I would like cook their food. I would do everything with the rope. Like I was just so grateful that they would take me out climbing. And so I, you know, that was that, you know, most of my life. And still, like I said, I would much rather be there. I would much rather, you know, be any of those places than in front of a screen. Not for me.
This is beautiful.
Oh,
Yeah.
and this is my other part of my journey. So this is this machine is actually not a Pilates reformer. This is the first generation Proformer. So I was introduced to Pilates in my teens. I actually found a VHS tape of one of my best friend's moms. I stole, I don't know, not really, I guess I borrowed and kept for a very long time. So if I'm being honest, it's probably some thievery. I did give it back, but I kept these VHS tapes for a long time. One was a yoga VHS tape and one was Pilates. I used to know who the teachers were, but I can't remember. And then I had a maybe Richard Feynman book. I can't remember. I had an old yoga book when I was really young, 13, 14. And I had these VHS tapes and I was mesmerized. So when I moved to Los Angeles, I thought I thought I'd hit the jackpot because I could take class with anybody else. And so, and then I became the protege of Sebastian Legree, who's a really hilarious French man. You can look him up. The story of Legree Fitness is for another time. And this is old vintage Lululemon. So other story. This is Lulu when it was still made in British Columbia, you know, before he said that, you know, people like me probably shouldn't wear his pants and, you know, whatever else. But old Lululemon.
Wow.
And like I said,
delicious.
Food for another time. I really, you know, my struggle with food and my work to heal myself again is a story for another time. But I did want to share, because of choices and things being very critical, and to bring this back to the family farm and Carter's Country Club. I know that Steiner, which is Rudolf Steiner, Weston A. Price, Paul Chek, Rob Wolf, many others, we could go on for days, and our creator have it right. Regenerate and please stop the debate. Okay, I am here to stand for regenerative farming practices. Nice. There is so much garbage information out there. There is so much fighting about food that I really invite us to take pause. Remember what Hippocrates said, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. My hope is that we can all come together and save our land and the family farm. While we debate nutritional beliefs or discuss the ethics of eating meat, crops are being sprayed. While we search for gluten-free recipes, chickens with brittle bones flop around in the dark in a Tyson coop, while the farmer who leases his land commits suicide. America and much of our developed world is so far from real food, it's scary. The truth is that people are not designed to eat food products made by man. We are designed to thrive on plants and animal foods. There are ethical ways to consume both. If you are being honest, just removing meat doesn't make you moral. We must think deeply about all life. This is where I agree to take in truly eclectic sources and keep reading. Food beliefs can be religious too. Please know that plants are conscious too, and it might be respectful of an animal's life to make good use of all its tissue as well as its life force. So I spent a lot of years in the raw food vegan world. I've spent a lot of years in the paleo world. I could go into it. All the things. Again, topic for another time, but my invitation with all this is to think about right choices. And if we're sitting around debating what people eat, that's absurd. And I chose red for this slide because there is a lot of Satanism right here. So we want to take a deep breath. So I spent a lot of time really focused on the physical. I spent a lot of time figuring out how to market and promote myself. I also traveled the country from 2006 to 2013 as a health educator. People listened to me because I had a white coat on. Nobody even knew that I do not hold an advanced degree. I had people in front of me, sometimes hundreds a day, that I was a phlebotomist. And so I quickly did a finger stick for cholesterol and glucose, and I would educate them on their health and wellness choices. I got to see into some really dark areas of the world, or not the world, of the United States, as I worked for doing health screenings for large insurance companies, big corporations. And the biggest one that I saw the most hypocrisy and disgusting behavior in was when here in Kentucky, in Louisville, Kentucky, I was doing a health screening for Yum Brands, and they told me to fully focus on my background in strength and conditioning and to talk about what they could add in to their diet and lifestyle, not what they should be taking out. Because if we talked about what they should be taking out, then we should talk about everything that Yum makes. So again, stories for another time, but this bottom right-hand corner is another part of probably 10 years of my life where I was a part of personal development. So I started with Landmark Education. I think I did Landmark when I was 21 or 22. And then I was invited and enrolled to take the LifeSpring trainings, which are called Mastery and Transformational Trainings, owned by Margot Majdi at the time. And I spent that's me volunteering for these personal developments. And there is I found so much truth in there, so much amazing shadow work, so much healing. But I do know about the darkness of Est and Werner Erhard, and so much of where, those trainings can kind of come from. And although, these things really, just kind of allowed me to kind of see through things. They were supportive in my growth and transformation. But I was still kind of participating, if you will, like if I'm being true. So in 2009, I took a yoga teacher training in Tulum, Mexico, before moving to Boulder, Colorado. I was in a very high vibratory state at the time. This came from years of traveling as a health educator. I had chosen to take this training and make a shift to dive deeply into my own practice. I wanted to be where I could climb, teach, and keep healing. Through MITT, that's Mastery and Transformational Training that I was just referencing, I had found a community in Colorado and wanted to be close to them. But the people in this region were not really like me. I would not fully understand this until 2020, when I again thought I would pick up and move back to Colorado. If I'm being honest, I have experienced some of the most brainwashed and hateful people in the world of outdoor sports. The level of judgment and ego is so strong. I'm making a generalization here, but that generalization seems to be very, very large general population. This is a topic for another time, and retrospectively, I can see why my time in Colorado was short-lived. So yoga was my world for a very, very long time. That was a big part of my path. And I love this picture of these young women in the bottom there, because I got to spend some, I really enjoyed my time with them, which kind of comes in a little bit later. In 2010, I moved into a lake cabin in North Georgia. After being disappointed in Colorado, I did not know where I belonged. I went back to traveling, doing health screenings, and searching for a practice that had truth. I had heard of intensati, which inten meaning intention, sati the Pali word for mindfulness, while in Colorado. So while working near San Francisco, I attended a workshop. I loved Patricia Moreno, and I felt that I had found what I had been looking for. I read her book, practiced her DVD, and went to New York to take her teacher training. This would come back again in 2020 in a way I could not expect. Again, not included here, but a really the practice of intensati and my work with Patricia is a really cool little side note. This is the little cabin in North Georgia on the left. Up the upper part is I lived on a Waldorf farm in North, a farm that had a Waldorf school in North Boulder. This dude had erected that teepee outside, and I was just happy to be teaching yoga in Estes Park and Pilates and all the things, but I was still really seeking. In 2011, I could not stay away and moved back to LA. At this time, I wanted to teach and needed community. Being alone in Georgia was not what I wanted, and I still believed that I could not do what I wanted in a large metropolitan area. Hence the belief there. I also missed my friends, the arts, healing practices, the access to real food, and I believed only California could offer it. I also had begun to focus my educational efforts on online marketing. I felt that my experience in theater and film would serve me, and I wanted so desperately to make a difference and to support others in letting go of the dogma and the false ideas of yoga that I felt were a really big problem. So I did my best. I felt kind of like the child that was trying to, when I was in my teens, we were kind of taught that like it was up to us to change the church from within. There was a part of me that felt like I could change the psyop of the multi-billion-dollar yoga industry. I thought I could change it, and that was my own delusion. In 2012, I knew that wherever you go, there you are, but I just kept seeking. I was unhappy in Los Angeles. I loved my teaching opportunities, the Equinox. I worked for the big, huge, crazy Equinox gym. I worked at 9 locations. I was on part of their, I love being around the peers. Like if we could just separate everything out and I could just like swing kettlebells with Amy Dixon, I'd be down. But I felt again the pull to move. Someone I knew needed to come back to the States for a few months. She needed someone to teach her classes. I wanted time to write and reflect, so I went to Mancora, Peru, which is a surf town, to teach yoga and Pilates. Again, I loved my classes. That's those young girls that were in the kind of waterfall pose earlier, and my students, but the community was not for me. I could feel the energy of cocaine everywhere. I've never done cocaine, but I could feel it. Like it was palatable, because this is like, they have these hostels here and these young people all come through traveling, but I was spending 6 days a week teaching, which was not what I wanted to do. I didn't get to go travel. I didn't get to go see Machu Picchu. I was just teaching. My friend who was planning to co-teach with me and develop an acro yoga practice together was robbed in Ecuador on his way south and didn't end up coming. So I felt super alone, and I would again flee to the families that I love. I loved in Colorado with a dear friend. Actually, the friend that I recommended, Lexi. Lexi and I spent this is a fun side note. Lexi and I spent our Christmas around house sitting for a friend in outside of Boulder, and we actually were sitting at the Boulder Whole Foods when I had yet another experience of the judgment of people there, where Lexi and I were eating ribs, And again, like we could talk about food and my years as a vegan, like a very, very long time. But at the time I was eating ribs, and this mother had to move her children away from us, that it was so disturbing to her that we were eating ribs, that she, scoffed and moved away. And that's what I felt like. I could have I don't know, probably 100 stories of things like that in Colorado, of just the like judgment. Like my joke used to be that, coming from California, that in California we would look at each other and be like, oh man, you compost, man, that's so great. I love that we're both composting. And in Boulder, they would be like, excuse me, I actually have like 3 PhDs and you're not composting correctly. Oh. So that's the way I felt. Another deep breath. So I was searching for community. I spent many years, just wanting to be with others, wanting to practice with others, wanting, to find my peers. And I didn't find it. In 2013, my time in, wait, that year is wrong. Oh, no, that's correct. So I left, again, my timeline, again, I get lost. In 2013, so I had left Colorado at that time. I'd gone back home to LA. I had realized that perhaps I was in love with my best friend. This is another story entirely, and would lead me down what I call the twin flame journey. This might also very well be a very powerful psyop if you look into it. There's a typo there. While back in LA, my classes were a success, but I missed climbing. I took a trip back to Joshua Tree and decided I had to move home to write a book and create a training. Before leaving LA, I took one last trip to the east side of the Sierras and felt that I was on the right track. I put all my things in the old climber house garage, where there's still probably climbers living today. And my Jack Russell Terrier, who you heard earlier, Quartz, and I, we flew to Kentucky. And the people on the right here are the first 2 rounds of the Mission Possible training that my friend Jenna Phillips Ballard, who's there in the pink, and there's quite a few people on there that have a lot of podcasts now. But we did this thing called Mission Possible, and I had kind of my own vision, and I wanted to bring all of these leaders to people. Like I really wanted this sense of community and to bring everybody together. So in 2014, I had moved back to Kentucky. So I was in Louisville, Kentucky, and I began teaching what I called Beyond Movement, because the years of studying online marketing had convinced me, that's a whole other story, that I did not need to write a book, but create a course. I would spend the next 2 years teaching tons of workshops, creating hundreds of videos, and teaching 5 rounds of this training, both in person and online. I loved the students and felt that perhaps this community was what I was searching for. So when it is obvious that the goals cannot be reached, don't adjust the goals, just the action steps. So Beyond Movement taught me a lot. Like I said, I still struggle with what to do with all that old audio and video and what I want to do with that. I think there's a podcast, if you want to look this up, on Wellness Force. You can probably look my name up on Josh Trent's Wellness Force and still find one of those old podcasts. I think I do a very terrible job of talking about divine masculine and feminine, just so you know. And my world was still movement, and I was doing my best to try to hide this personal development work within this physical practice, and trying to blend together this concept of beyond movement, of going beyond movement. And I had partnered with all of, some of those people that you saw in the image earlier, and then other people to, create this curriculum. And I taught lots of workshops. I don't know. I thought that's where I needed to make a difference. While teaching my own work, I began to feel that it was lacking dance. I also had been teaching classes in a university setting and thought that this community was the one for me. My friends, my students were peers. They wanted to learn, and it was such a stark contrast to the purely fitness-focused individuals in most gyms. So I chose to go back to college to study dance. I was accepted into a program at Appalachian State, but I thought that choosing to continue my studies back at Western Kentucky University is where I had began in the year 2000 would be a better choice. I was also deep in the twin flame work and was influenced by that and these choices. Again, more for another time. So I moved everything online at that point. And I did have some people that I worked with in person, but most of what I was doing was online. And I had to share this picture of Rachel Browning because in 2020, she was one of the people that didn't understand me and, thought that I was an evil Trumpster, which I am totally not an evil Trumpster, but other stories for other times.
I'm sorry.
Life is what happens while you're busy making other plans. And then there's this dude. So now we're back full circle. I got pregnant while I was back in school at Western, and so I chose to have Carter. This is the beautiful birth community that surrounded me. Some of these children are and families are still in our lives today.
Nice.
I made many different choices because of this dude. I struggled for many years to figure out what my work was to be. So this picture was actually taken with our dear friend, who was one of the few people that hung with us all through COVID and saw through the bullshit along with us.
Wow.
But she was the one who first took him in the pool, not me.
Aww.
Because I was working. You only have control over 3 things in your life: the thoughts you think, the images you visualize, and the actions you take. Massive truth there. So I made different choices with Carter, right? Again, maybe we have different beliefs on food, but he chewed on that rib bone for 45 minutes, and he is a true omnivore. This is his first little plank. We're in a studio, really cool, but I had this studio at 1111. That was our address when he was a baby. I skipped ahead faster than I wanted to. That was also my grandfather, who, we could talk about. He passed away right before COVID. Thank goodness he was not in assisted living and separated. He got to have time with Carter. Again, other story for another time. My friend Casey had inherited this farm. This is actually an image that we stole and used for online marketing. But that's actually the one in the lower right-hand corner is where we actually were. I was trying to figure out what was best for him. And this little dude, as you can see here, all he wanted was to put dirt in his mouth.
Yeah.
All the time. And again, my friend Lexi that I referenced, Alexandra Christuris, said that my son probably consumed more dirt in supportive of his microbiome than most kiddos.
Yeah.
He did. And this is a perfect picture here of him in Quartz. He just wanted to be outside. He's also wanting to watch that garbage truck at the same time. But, he was busting through our, that fence eventually got replaced, but the old fence outside of our house, he wanted to be out there all the time. He did not really want to be inside. I have this insane wooden toy collection that sits over there in the corner behind me right now. He did not want to be there. He wanted to be outside. And thus, my journey comes back to rock climbing. When I was still in social media, people thought that I was choosing to climb for me, that, I was choosing to be selfish. But I felt it was the best place for him. I felt that all we had to do was pack a lot of trucks into the backpack, and he would play in the good sand and the dirt all day. This is in the Red River Gorge in the lower right-hand corner. Around that time period, he had a very stupid life jacket on and was floating between me and Justin and flipped on his face. And he had so much trauma in the water. It took us like 2 years to undo that. So again,
Wow.
stories for another time about how poor flotation can screw you up. But good choices. I really valued Carter's sleep. I changed his life and schedule to really, be supportive of him. I made many different choices in my life and his life. And he just chose bikes. So this is like he had toddled over to this child's bike and just needed to touch it. That was always him. I prioritized movement. You can see all of his little, what we call the free toes, his little.
Love that.
And the huge, massive cloth diaper that is hanging down in that upper right-hand corner while he's playing with those gymnastics parallettes. Most of the time he was not wearing that cloth diaper. So we just had like pre-folds, and he would just pee on the floor, and the stupid, crazy, gross Jack Russell would, lick pee and poop. I know, he's so nasty. He's so ridiculous. And this is at the farmer's market, our local community farmer's market here. He loves those carts still to this day. That's my old climbing harness.
Wow.
Like I said, that was during those first years. That's what we did, because I felt like this is where he needed to be. And that's where that simple mysticism and the wisdom of the grandmothers and grandfathers of just trusting. And again, this is where like I did make the right choice. And he was thriving in that environment. And that's Black Bear there in the corner. I have a brown bear and he has a black bear. Mine is gonna be 42 in October.
Amazing.
His is 8. This is what it was. It was like in the back of our old dirty Prius that we just had to surrender recently. I like cried and kissed the car. Like I loved, it was my stepdad's car. Oh, that was another story that I left out of my traumatic birth story. My stepfather passed away the morning after he was born. He was in the other hospital. Whoa. Very crazy. So we drove the Prius into the ground. That Prius is off-roaded more. If you're listening to this and you think that your truck has off-roaded more, it hasn't. The Prius is far more. And again, that's back to my, green mind control having the Prius. But really that Prius did a lot. This is this parking, this basketball court that you can see here is at Miguel's Pizza, which is in the Red River Gorge. And we would spend the next number of years around the climbing community in Miguel's. And so I call this an evolution of a crag baby. And Jerry, I'm aware of our time. Okay, we're still good, right?
No worries. Yeah, we can keep going.
Okay. I'm getting there. I'm moving along with my exorbitant amount of slides. So I call this evolution of a crag baby. If you're not familiar with rock climbing, when you just kind of like climb like a single pitch or, one rope length, essentially like your sport climbing or your traditional climbing, but you're just like climbing a small pitch, we call that like a crag. So Carter would just he lived at the base of the crag. So in 2008, we spent long weekends in the Red River Gorge. Carter and I eventually broke the kid carrying backpack. In addition to climbing gear, snacks, and water, Carter added trucks. Frozen breast milk, bottles, and diapers filled all exterior pockets of the pack. I held it together with duct tape to make it through the last season. Carter then moved back into his Lilla baby carrier. So I would put him on my front in the Lilla baby carrier as he got bigger. And I had a 75-liter huge backpack that I carried everything else in. I will say, I'll toot my own horn. I was pretty impressive at that time with my backpack and this very thick, strong baby on the front. This lasted until the summer of 2019, when Carter began to complete approach trails.
Wow.
This would lead to the strength and success in cross country now 5 years later. So Carter,
oh yeah, the triathlete.
oh
That's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. So he runs cross country now. He's ran 2 seasons of indoor track and field, and he actually has a big meet tomorrow. But he became strong through doing approach trails. I mean, he had to, because literally, I'm not joking when I tell you he broke the backpack. Like, it was like, sorry, dude, the backpack is broken. You're gonna have to like crawl. We've got it. So this is a very unsafe image of me. I am not backed up in that rappel at all, because I've been rappelling since I was a teenager. So I somehow thought that it was a good choice to rappel with Carter on my back. Justin wasn't there that day to tell me that I was being irresponsible. And he wasn't there the days before when I had done it by myself. I one time also rappelled with the dog and Carter. So I sometimes make very stupid choices. So, you know, we can all own up to our things. This image in the upper right-hand corner is the Lashbrook family. My grandmother was still alive.
Wow.
This was the last Lashbrook Christmas. And I don't know who's to blame. I don't know who made the choice. I don't know where it came from. But this was the last Christmas that Carter was allowed to attend. And then 2020 came, right? So then we didn't have Christmas in 2020. And then my grandmother would then pass away, and then they would sell the farm. But someone was concerned about Carter's lack of vaccinations. And so he didn't get to attend the Christmas in 2019. So that's why I have this little image here of him just kind of walking away. Yeah, again, most of those people, it's probably not their fault. I don't know which one. Someone got to my grandmother, or maybe it was the news that got to my grandmother. I don't know. Something. So we just kept climbing. You know, that was like our whole world. This day was actually really hilarious. I took a really big fall off that route, which is called Ruby Slipper in the Emerald City. And everybody looked at Carter to be like, what's Carter going to do? And he laughed and he just goes, ha, miss. You know, they thought, really? Because you can see this hammock, right? So we decided that it was a good choice. Back to the poor choices, right? We thought it was a good idea to maybe belay out of this hammock. So then when I took the fall, I fell even further. I was totally fine. I like scraped up my leg, but it was pretty funny to watch Carter there. So in 2008, I chose fully to build a life for the three of us. There is much to share about the conclusion of my years of living in the Twin Flame story. Choosing Justin as my partner and choosing him only is also a story for another time. It was all about Carter, you know, like he really is the through line here, as I think most mothers can relate with.
Yeah.
And yes, you know, Mr. Right is always right, always. But I was really, really wrong for a really long time. And this kind of looks like Carter's being abducted into a creeper van. But we built out, we converted an old Ford E-Line 250. This is my good friend Holly, and she looks like super beautiful, like first thing in the morning. We're at Miguel's, and like I got my glasses on. Carter's nose is running. But yeah, we spent 2019 living in a van. You know, Justin would always joke, he's like, in the van down by the river. Like, that's really where we were. Because again, people thought we were being selfish. And Justin definitely, you know, I'm not going to tell his story, but, you know, for him, you know, this was like the most free he had ever felt.
Wow.
And so this was the gorge. Carter wanted to be in the good sand. We still kept the Prius. And I had to, these kiddos, I don't want to share too many images of other people's children, but these have been shared in social media, so I feel that it's fair game. But we have some really amazing kids that have been in his life, his whole life, that I don't want to get too much into their choices, but we're all on the same page. And I love, and this little boy's name is Charlie Daniels. Charlie Daniels and Carter are drinking some really awesome raw milk from his family farm, because they still have their family farm. They haven't made stupid choices, but these are Carter and some more crag babies. It's where he lived, at the base of the crag, dirty in the backpack. I made a really cool choice to give him a harmonica at a young age. That was not my choice. My high school band director, I wasn't in band, I was in choir, but my high school band director used to take my Pilates classes, and she said if Carter could play a kazoo, that he could play a harmonica.
Wow.
And so he did, and it was really, really cool. I made a very bad choice of allowing Carter a lot of times to sleep in the kid carrier, or I would hold him. I wish that I had listened to Justin and put him in the hammock earlier. He didn't really sleep super well, taking naps at the crag, so we just had to, like, someone would hold his little sweaty body for like a couple hours. And maybe that was good, right? The attachment parents would say that was good, but it might have been nicer to put him in a hammock. He might have not been so sweaty. I don't know. Other choices. But he just wanted to be outside. That's what we did. Amazing. And this is a really interesting day. I was climbing with a group of, quote, women, and the trans person there is not in this image. These are not trans women in front of you. So at a young age, we had to have a conversation because of the consciousness of the rock climbing community around having a woman that was taking hormones and had top surgery and all those kind of things to quote, become a trans dude, or however you want to say it. I don't care anymore if I'm politically correct, because I know that's part of brainwashing and mind control. If that offends you, I'm sorry. But I'm very clear with my son. But at the time, I was less clear. A whole lot less clear. Like I said, it was a good environment in a lot of ways, but there's some real faults in the so left we fell off the left coast peers that I had. I put myself in that camp too. And this comes to this very pink slide. So to talk about my own mind control, and before I really believed that Mr. Wright was right, like I said, Carter loved bikes, and one of the 4 balance bikes that he did have was pink. It wasn't this one in the picture, it was a different one. But I thought, whatever, I'm gonna raise him neutral. I don't know if I really was gonna do that, but on some level I thought I would. I gave an explanation at the beginning of my classes at that time, about the biological male and female pelvis. Then I listened, I watched and observed my son. Then my worldview expanded and the mind control became clear. Now I tell my swimmers that I'm training strong boys and girls. There are no dogs allowed in this pool, and that pun is totally intended. So I come back to green for the heart chakra, because I didn't choose to raise him neutral. And just like many of my fellow unschoolers, I followed his lead. Now, I don't subscribe to radical unschooling, and I don't know if I really like the label of unschooling, but I followed his lead. I followed him. And, I also followed my instincts, and I thought that it was pretty fitting that this shirt, I called him the baby whale because in the hospital they forced me to give him some donor breast milk, and he had to have like 2 ounces every hour when he was first born, or something stupid. So I always called him the baby whale because he drank a lot of milk. And I like that this shirt said that, it was supposed to say everything's going to be all right, but it's like everything right. And at the time, like I said, I was still under mind control. I still thought that there was an objective right or wrong. But then I saw through it. Fear is perception, false emotion appearing real, or sometimes people say false evidence appearing real. and fear is the currency of control. Thank you for David Icke, and thank you for his clarity. All my fears became true, and everything I had been avoiding thinking was really happening, and it became super clear. I knew that the wisest people I know and thinkers I had studied were right. There were a lot of confusion for me too during this time, but I began to really sort through the mind control. I listened to sources and read authors I had never expected to read. And the truth that Aaron Russo's wife had shared with me in 2005 became really real. I made different choices. Carter went to a forest school, which was a good choice on some fronts. But I removed myself from social media. So that was probably close to one of the last posts. I don't know, or maybe something I shared. I'm not sure. So I removed myself from social media to focus on my family first. A close second were the children, along with the families whom I coach in swim and I teach in gymnastics. My true research began as I chose to consume less media, even though it was alternative. Reading as many books as I could for myself and reading novels to Carter became so important. We also made many different choices than anyone else we knew. Carter's teachers wore masks in forest school. I taught Carter to stand up to that opportunity. Eventually, we would leave the forest school. In 2020, when other people weren't doing anything, we found a baseball league that was happening. And I eventually went into swimming because you didn't have to wear a mask in the pool, at least where I was coaching. Nice. I took Carter to a concert during 2020. We went to see Jimmy Buffett, and Jimmy Buffett, true to his, which I believe that's what Kathy O'Brien says in her book, that Jimmy Buffett was a CIA operative, and I totally believe it. So we went to this concert, and he completely pushed the vaccine. In 2020, we went skiing with our friends that would go skiing. We found a ski resort that was open. We put buffs around our neck and didn't use them. And we found gyms that Carter could train in.
Nice.
But he was alone, which you can kind of see in the upper right-hand corner. He felt really alone. We kind of struggled, like, are we part of the Patriot movement? Are we not? But then there was this world. There was the world. People, these I stole offline. They're still there. They haven't hit it. How stupid and ignorant these people were. I could tell you a story of this man that I watched get into the pool with a mask on and all these things, and watching people get the vaccine as a lifeguard, afraid that people were going to like die in the pool. Oh, it was so gross. But then there was this dude. He became an incredibly strong swimmer during this time because I went where I felt like I was called. They didn't have enough swim coaches to run programs. They didn't have enough lifeguards to open pools. So I would not teach fitness or anything with a mask on, but I was welcome to coach without one. Nice. And that's what I did. The first thing totalitarian leaders do is make sure their voices are the only ones left. Another great book if you haven't read it. And I took Carter to the trucker protest. And we just lived in the world of swimming and did our best to tell our truth wherever we could.
I love that.
And this is what was going on in my world of dance. So Carter didn't dance for many years because I didn't find a place that wasn't doing this. I'm serious. Wow. If you're watching this and you had a dance facility that never did this to your people, please contact me. Please send me an email because I haven't found one.
Whoa.
Let's take a breath. Please never forget that this happened. Never can we allow this to happen again. It was insane. I am still dealing with the consequences of this choice to mask children, to mask people, to mask athletes that so many parents made. I'm dealing with the consequences of the choice to mask the children that many parents made with my swimmers daily. Children struggle still to this day to breathe properly, to breathe in and out through their nose. It did affect them. It did harm them. I taught my son to stand up and say no. Even at the age of 3, he learned how not to comply. I never put a mask on him, and I never will. I will not restrict anyone's breathing or their speech. I have no words for anyone who will argue this, that this was needed. I have nothing to say to those who would do it again. Masking is wrong, and anyone still doing it is ignorant. I saw one yesterday.
It's still,
It's still happening. It's still happening.
In the airport. Yeah, I saw some people. It's crazy.
I saw a lady outside of the grocery store still had it on. And I said, Carter, you could walk up and you could say, ma'am, I don't think that, if you don't mind me saying so, that is not healthy. For breath is life. So if you breathe, well, you will live long on earth. And that's what I couldn't understand, that they were doing it in the yoga world. They were doing it in the fitness world, the whole world that I had taught people to breathe for years.
Wow.
So, but he did get to come back to dance. And and so I stand today that I will create a company, that I will have teams, and we will never do any of these things.
Love it.
The hardest job kids face today is learning good manners without seeing any. It's kind of true.
Nice.
In my ballets, women is first. Men are consorts. God made men to sing the praises of women. They are not equal to men. They are better. And that's George Balanchine. We might disagree with George Balanchine on a lot of levels, but I don't have Carter dancing because I think he needs to be a trans TikTok kid. I have him dancing so that he learns, so that one day he can partner his wife. We talk about, we go to these, we went to this really cool square dance thing, and I know we're almost at the end of our time. And I really used it as an opportunity. I wanted him to ask the girls to dance, and I just so excited for him to be this strong dude. The big vision for me is a farm, a training center, a fine art complex, a school, in quotations, a moral place for all families who consciously choose.
Yeah.
And so that's the end of my slides. I figured it'd probably take me right at 90 minutes.
Amazing.
And these are my kiddos that I get to work with in person. This is part of my swim team in the upper right-hand corner. These are some of my gymnasts from the first recital. We're getting ready for recital number 4. And I don't share these children's images lightly. I know these images have been shared in social media. So again, I feel that they're fair game. I would shoot you in the face if you hurt these children. I would do anything to protect them. USA Gymnastics is disgusting, and all of the complicit organizations. Our Olympics is disgusting. We must create an alternative place for these children to participate and compete and be strong. And if you're listening to this and you believe in my truth and you hear my heart, and if you donate to me, I will put these funds towards what I call Carter's Country Club. I will put these funds towards these children I want to impact more, which is again why I'm here. I would rather be with them in the pool. I would rather be with them in the gymnastics studio. But I am here with you, and I will stop sharing my screen.
Amazing.
I will take a breath. And so if you, my email was there. I
can add it to the description too.
Yeah, add it to the description. Please reach out to me. Email is the best way. Throughout the course of the course that we're in, I will create a website for Carter's Country Club. I do have that domain. Nice. I will be taking donations because this is a private club, not private because it's like a club and we're excluding people, but because you're just donating to these children, and we don't need the government to have anything to do with it. I don't need them to give me the right to do anything. And I will that's why I'm here. That's why I made the choices I made is for them. And that's why I'm in front of this screen. And like I said, I would rather be anywhere else, really. Maybe not anywhere else, but I would definitely rather be other places. So, but Gary, thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you so much.
If anybody that listened to this whole thing, I am so grateful. I'm open always to questions, comments, or feedback. That feedback can be interruptive. All those years of those mind control trainings, I learned how to take interruptive feedback, so I can. But thank you, and Jerry, thank you for the work that you're doing, and everybody else that's on this journey with us. And thank you for Mark for connecting us, and everybody else in the training, and all of you. Maybe he's got some faults, and I will not be voting, just so you know. But when RFK Jr. tells us that he will see us on the barricades, I hope that you will take action. I hope that we will not stand by for these children any longer.
Dude, I love it. I love everything, and your story, culminating to right action with your vision of the Carter's Country Club, and the incorporation, of movement, art, and just like child-directed learning. And I'm just so excited in your journey and the culmination. It's beautiful. So congratulations.
I want a community. Please don't let us be alone. My son has been alone. We've been alone. We're not alone. So we want to, if this has to start online, that's okay. But we're desiring a physical place.
Yeah.
Physical.
Yeah, totally. In person. Yes. All right. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
All right.